So I apologize, I've been called out of town here. I had to get out of town much earlier than expected, so I only got about 10 or 15 minutes today. Michelle will be chairing the meeting after I leave, but before we did that, I wanted to, we'll invert our normal agenda and handle our normal business after I left, but I wanted to make sure that I was here for
They're not gonna have a
the
quorum.
mayor's presentation, so if you'd like to kick us off, Mayor, that'd be terrific.
Sure, thank you. I'll just have a very quick piece of this and then turn it over to Butler, Carroll, Seifert, and Baker Tilly. But we wanted to present, I think some of you, I know Jack and hopefully Paul were at some of the meetings that we've had where Butler, Carroll, and Seifert have presented the plans, preliminary plans for the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, breaking that into a couple of phases, one for the clarifier project and then for the full plant expansion, and also upgrading the collection system. So first we'll do kind of an overview of what the project is with John Brand, President of Butler, Carroll, and Seifert, and then Ross Hagan from Baker Tilly will take you through some of the numbers. So.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, I'm John Brand with Butler, Carroll, and Seifert, and Colin Dale is here with me as well. Is that?
Just come up to
The mic?
the, yeah, the microphone.
There you go.
So, as the mayor alluded to, there's been a plan and a study report done for a two-phase expansion for the wastewater treatment plant. The first phase is adding a clarifier out at the facility. That doesn't increase the rated flow or the hydraulic capacity of the plant. Whereas phase two, the bigger project, is an increase for Indiana Packers. It's an increase to the south end of the county and the redevelopment area, and it's also an increase for the city of Delphi. So those three entities would all have additional wastewater capacity. In the case for Carroll County, that would be new capacity. The number's currently 0, and then IPC in the city is at town, are they approximately double?
Yes,
Yeah,
the city is doubling and IPC is about a 70%.
Yeah, in relative terms as far as what the expansion would be. The overall cost of the projects, we provided that in the study report and all. At a high level, that's what the projects entail. I'll turn to answer any questions you have on any technical part, but then we'll turn it over to Baker Tilly.
Did you say IPC is about to go 70% more on the water?
This is for wastewater. This expansion is for wastewater, so the request would be.
They have a request to do 70% more.
Wastewater, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, and there's their waste stream is stronger than a normal domestic residential waste stream, so there's been part of the challenge of that is the allocation of what the cost should be for the future project, both on a gallons basis hydraulically, and also on a pounds of treatment basis hydraulically. And Baker Tilly's done a nice job of sorting through that and coming up with allocations of cost for the big project. Great question. Other questions on the engineering?
Well, just follow up on that. So you're saying, IPC has requested a 70% increase, or this, expansion would result in a 70% increase?
Yes and yes.
Okay, so what does IPC anticipate using initially? I mean, are they currently, holding back from some of their, effluent discharge because of lack of capacity? I mean, where does this put them in terms of percentage of, future usage?
They're using 100% of their current allocation, and I won't speak for John or Board, but there's times when they would like to do more in their processing, but they're limited by ordinance on what their flows can be, both at gallons and pounds. So they are throttled at a capacity that's certain. They have, in the past, they've gotten some seasonal increases for 3 to 6 month period, but they're limited. They can't exceed that allocation, or if they do, there are significant penalties if they do exceed it. So their request is for additional processing for their facility to increase, and their request was that 70% number of the increase. So they're around 800,000 to 1 million gallons a day that they currently discharge, depending on what season it is, and they would move up closer to 1.5 gallons.
Yep, 1.5.
1.5 million gallons a day. that's their request. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, just, so does that 70% increase allow them any, is it adequate for future anticipated needs?
These are the numbers that they have requested, they determined, there's been a lot of,
Back and forth?
yeah, right, so a couple different iterations of that, yeah, it's what they need, I think we're not looking at a 3 to 5 year horizon based on this is a significant project, it's a longer term, timeline, and they would like it to be in one phase. That's the other, part that we talked about, whether it could be phased, or that they would like that increase, they wanna go up to that capacity, that allocation, to increase their operation. And why we're doing that, of course, what's the right amount for Carroll County, and what's the right amount for the city of Delphi, to look at that at the same time.
And can the capacity, I mean, is the solution that you've engineered the only way to get them the capacity that they currently want? Or the way that you've let me say this another way. Is there another way to engineer the plan that would give them the capacity they would need at a lower price point?
I don't think so. We looked at a south wastewater facility out there closer to their facility. The permit limitations for that discharge point out there are much more stringent, so the cost per gallon of treatment is much more than it would be to expand the current facility.
What was the word you used, the what, restrictions? Out there?
Allocation.
No, we put it out there, you said
Of the wastewater out, the permit limitations. It's a very small receiving stream, a small amount of water, where Deer Creek has significantly more, so the discharge requirements have to do with what's the size of the receiving
I
stream.
see.
We did that was part of the evaluation in the study. That is not a recommendation, but it's much more expensive to do that option.
Gotcha.
So, good question.
And if I could just add too, that also means more personnel and, 2 plants to maintain. We did that, so, it's not a good solution
Yeah, I
regardless.
just wanna be really clear that I'm asking a good question. So, like, did the plan that is building, what's the total new capacity?
Collins, a 1.5 to 3.2.
That is correct.
1.5 million gallons a day is the current rated capacity for
Right.
the plant. 3.2 would be the capacity after expansion.
So, this plan that more than doubles capacity is the only plan, there's no incremental place there between what Indiana Packers needs at 700 to the 1.5.
They're asking for it all at one time. Now, the first part of the project is an additional clarifier that doesn't add capacity, but it provides, right now, if one of the 2 clarifiers is taken out of service, it's not good. They can't meet permit limitations, so phase 1 is to put the additional clarifier out there and make sure from a regulatory and compliance point of view that there's not a problem. That doesn't get increased capacity, that ensures that the city and the wastewater facility meets current permit limitations. Phase 2 is the expansion piece, so 1.5 to 3.2.
Right.
And they've asked for it all in one chunk. We've asked that question in pieces.
Right, and my question is, I mean, they've asked for 700, but your plan is 1.5, or 1.7.
That includes the city and we're only giving IPC what they asked for.
Right.
The city capacity and the Carroll County capacity, those were numbers
Right.
that we got from Jake, for economic development south of town and the city expansion as well.
Right, and what I'm saying is that, there are constraints here, significant constraints to monetarily.
Sure.
So, and the numbers that we're getting frankly are just almost unattainable. I mean, Baker Tilly, which is interesting that Baker Tilly's on both sides of this deal, but Baker Tilly, it's made it very clear that this deal is not fundable, the way that it exists. I mean, I'm not gonna put words in their mouth, it's almost impossible for us to fund this. But that's my question is, how do we go from, is there another plan? Is there a way that we can meet their needs only and engineer it in that way? Understanding that maybe we wanna get to this plan eventually, but, You know, there's a lot of assumptions in there, and definitely a cash flow that's not gonna match that. So how do we, but with all of that being said, Indiana Packers is a critical part of this community, and we wanna make sure that we meet their needs. Can we meet their needs without, can we build a Chevrolet and not a Cadillac to get them to where they need to be, and look at this incrementally, so that we build their capacity, but don't, and find a way to do that that's fiscally responsible.
What we looked at in the study were the requests made by the county and the city and IPC for the expansion. If your question is, can we look at a smaller project?
Yeah.
Now, the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Now, what that looks like and whether that's what the city wants or that's what IPC, we didn't dictate.
Yeah, yeah.
Those were things that were given to us through the evaluation based on these flow increases.
Okay.
I got a question. How many new houses would this fund for the city, or not fund, but allow us to bring on?
Colin, what's the city increases, how much?
So the city increase about 500,000 gallons is going to be likely somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,500 homes equivalent. That's based off of, you know, somewhere around 200 to 300 gallons per day of usage.
It's 1,500 to 1,600 additional EDUs.
Okay. Is that kind of what, Jake, you see, you know?
Generationally, that covers any of the residential needs, you know, when we speak with the city. From our perspective, that investment and that capacity upgrade should suffice for our, in this room's generational needs for the city of Delphi. Or for,
Yeah, this would, if it would be long-term bonds or some kind of financing like that, I think this is a 20-year look capacity that will be provided for both the city, for redevelopment and also for Indiana Packers.
Josh, have you looked at the possibility of long-term bonds and
That's what Baker Tilly does.
and it's still almost unattainable?
Well, the way I read it, and Baker Tilly's here, and I'm running short on time, it looks like their ask is $15 million. Our borrowing capacity is like 9, of which 3 is already eroded and by our current obligations, and so, and we don't have 20-year horizon. The current TIF reverts in 11 years. So the current allocation area reverts in 11 years. So we can't even enter into a 20-year obligation under the current taxing structure.
And I see you have our, Ross Hager with Baker Tilly, just to jump in, you have kind of a lengthy presentation. I just brought a kind of short presentation that just outlines, what's the total cost of the project, what the county asked, IPC asked, and then what's the city covering. Has some initial rate impacts that we had updated in our larger presentation for the city, but that's exclusively the city, so just kind of focusing on the first couple pages of this is what kind of wanted to walk the board through here today, so.
So I have one question for you, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
No problem.
This is the
Yep.
worst possible thing, and I apologize. Has Indiana Packers committed to their portion of this, deal?
Probably,
So they have pretty much committed to the phase 1. Their board is meeting again in December to look at the phase 2 project. John Rebord is out of town this week, so I had that communication from him by email, but they obviously need the capacity.
So they're bringing upfront cash and rate to the deal, is that?
that's what we're proposing.
That's my understanding.
They're having that conversation, is it upfront cash or pay that back, principal and interest over a period of time, but that's the sort of things that are being discussed in December.
Right, but your illustration assumes upfront cash.
Right, so then the mechanics are still being discussed, which referred to is, so we've kind of put on the table for any of the Packers, if they want to pursue an option of paying an additional surcharge in addition to the rate impact that they're going to face. They could do that, which would illustratively finance their portion over a period of time, but give us the upfront cash that we would need through bonding that we would do, the city would do, to be able to pay for the project.
I apologize, I gotta give it to
No
you.
problem. Alright, so I don't know if any of these numbers are gonna surprise anyone, because I know, I see you do have the presentations that we have, but we've broken it down here into the two phases of the project, first being the clarifier project, and then the second being the much larger piece of the puzzle, which is the expansion project that John was talking about. So you can see on page 2, we've got the outline of the clarifier project, and then we've broken it down to what we've shown as allocable to the city, the county, Indiana Packers, and then the total cost of the project. I don't know that I need to run down line by line. I can do that if you'd like to, but just kind of at a high level, the way we've kind of allocated the cost between the different stakeholders of the project are based on what the project is addressing, or what each individual part of the project is addressing. So some parts of the project, the clarifier project being one of those, is really focused more on post-project organic loading amounts. So that would be like your BOD, your ammonia loadings, and the amount of pounds that each of the stakeholders would need. So that's kind of how we've allocated the cost of the clarifier project. You can see that kind of in our footnote, which is allocating those based on those post-project loading amounts. So in total, for the clarifier project, the estimated cost is just in the ballpark of $6 million. That's broken down into the various portions of the city, covering about say $1.5 million of that. County a little over $800,000, and then IPC picking up the majority of the tab at about $3.8 million for the clarifier project. So that's the first phase of the project. So turning the page to page 3, which is the larger portion of the project, the expansion project. So in this, we've allocated various parts of the project based on, again, what that part of the project is addressing. So some are based on post-project capacity, some are based on, again, the organic loadings that we're factoring in here post-project. But again, you can kind of see that through our footnotes. I'll kind of just focus on the high-level impact, and then obviously we can dive in with questions. But what we're looking at in total for the expansion project is a project of just north of $50 million. So $51 million essentially is the project cost for the expansion project. That can then be broken down into the various stakeholders. So the city would be picking up about $13.2 million as we proposed it. The county would be about $12.9 million, and then Indiana Packers just under $25 million for the expansion portion of the project. So again, these are preliminary cost estimates. Obviously, bidding environment can change what these would be, but this would have the county on the hook for just under $14 million in total when you add together those two pieces of the project between the clarifier project and the expansion project. So again, obviously hit that on a high level. Happy to answer any questions.
Is that 14 million financeable then with bonds over, how much would the yearly payments be?
Yeah, I don't have that number, but we can get you that number, and I work with Matt. I know he works with the board to get that number. From a kind of theoretical standpoint, it certainly could be financed if there's the capacity to do so. Obviously, I'm not kind of the representative of the board like Matt is, that would be able to tell you what you can and can't support from a capacity standpoint. But bonding for that would give you those proceeds up front, which then could be used for the project and then pay back over a period of time. So I do think bonding in some capacity is on the table to cover the cost of the project.
Ross, does that include the evaluation of the TIF proceeds that can spin off with IPC's expansion?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think that would be what Matt would look at, is what would be, any additional revenues that might be generated through this, and then what that would support in terms of debt service.
That hasn't been, or has been evaluated?
No, I don't think that's been evaluated in full yet, but I do know that Matt is kind of working on that analysis.
I think the one thing to think about, and this, I've been on all the calls with the group, just discussing the redevelopment commission's plan on how we get this financed because of the limiting steps. The option was brought up that we could look at a reallocation area for any improvements beyond what was being made. So I think that we should probably, not maybe for today's conversation, but as you're asking that question, if there's going to be new net assessed, what does that look like? And could it be a separate allocation area, would then have the bonding ceiling, available to them?
Right.
But we don't, I think we don't know enough from any of the Packers to know what that is,
Yes.
to be able to trigger that to happen. So I don't wanna get us off sidetrack, but we're trying to come up with a strategy that works. And that might end up being one, so hopefully I didn't make it.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't wanna speak for Matt, obviously, you know, we do work on separate teams here, but we've had a little bit of discussion, just tentatively, and I do know, you know, the existing TIF area would not support a bond of the full $14 million. I couldn't tell you the exact dollar amount that it would support, but I know in talking briefly with Matt that, you know, that would not be feasible to fund the full $14 million of the project, so I think part of what, you know, his look is gonna need to do is look at that, what does that give you, what else is available, what other avenues could we take? But obviously, that's kind of in his core rather than my core.
Jake, you said you've been on all the calls. Do you have a sense from IPC if they're going to move forward with their board with a full approval on it or not?
I have not been on those calls with any of the
Okay.
Packers. The mayor has the most relevant, information, Michelle, on that. I've just been on.
And again, my information from John Revord is that, you know, they're meeting in December,
So we really don't even know their complete stance at this point in time.
they're,
I'd say they're leaning to, we wanna do this.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's been 2 or 3, meetings at a high level where John came back, and when they met, had some specific questions, which those got answered. I think they're progressing towards wanting to do this project.
It's a
They know
question of how
phase
they
one,
finance.
they know phase one is gonna happen. That can just be, you know, really just rates and charges with phase two. They are progressing towards a way to get this figured out. The throttling and the allocation, if they're at the ceiling of their allocation, that's a concern for them.
I mean, I
And they understand the only way to address that concern is to get additional capacity and pay their share.
And I talked to, we've discussed really high level what that job commitment would be, what that capital, what that new AV would, not what it would be, but there would be new AV. In some cases, in other cases, it would just be functional arrangement of the process, so it really wouldn't, it'd be more of a retainment of jobs because they're building efficiencies in their process, but I did confirm that they are in good standing with the IEDC for funding on an expansion. It would have to meet their needs on a job count, investment count, but he didn't indicate, or they didn't indicate that would be, that could be part of this solution as well, so.
Does anybody else have questions? It sounds like there's a lot involved in there.
Question for the city now, so the 13.2 from the city, so did Josh say that you could finance up to $9 million, give or take, or was that mentioned to city? No.
I think he's talking on your side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe.
Did-
Right. I think he was-
Yeah.
So what about the city, can you guys swing the 13 mil?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no problem. Good.
Yeah, the plan for the city would be to finance that through likely SRF, the Indiana State Revolving Fund, through a bond to be able to pay for their portion of the project with the adjustments rates.
Okay.
Josh, what would a new allocation area look like? How would that work? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's a really, something we should consider. So yeah, that would just be by resolution establishing, the parcel in which the expansion was going to take place, or all of the expansion, any of the assessed improvements would be.
The IPC's expansion.
Correct.
That would be the major component of the new allocation area, so you would capture that increase assessed valuation as part of the funding, but would not include the existing plant facility. That runs out, it would still run out.
So yeah, in 11 years, essentially all the revenue is going back to the coffers, or reduced in rate, or however, you know, whatever mechanism is in place from DLGF and, for the rates. But then the standing expansion that we're talking about now would stay in existence, if it was a new allocation area.
So how,
And there would be there could be, based on the Colin, what was the number for Carroll County development Say that again.
It's 700,000
So
gallons.
there's 700,000 gallons of wastewater treatment area for something out there other than IPC. So, and what, that can be part of the allocation or that cannot be part of it, but you're gonna have that allocation, you're gonna want to get people to come in when they build their facilities, that can be in or that can be out, because there's 700,000 gallons allocated for that for the county.
Well, for example, back when in the current, Peter Heartland Industrial Park, that's already, in an allocation area. Right.
Correct, so if we, I hate to play too hypothetical, to kind of answer your question, so if we had a new project that was requiring TIF in the industrial park tomorrow, I would be asking the redevelopment commission likely to reallocate that parcel so that we could bond that new AV and reset that allocation for that property, to give them liquidity in that new assessed value. So I think the same still applies for Indiana Packers' new allocation area, if and hypothetical that this upgrade is, you know, gonna cash flow a bond, then yeah, that's how it would work. On the capacity side, to go back to what we had asked for, and the city was really helpful in allowing us to provide input on how we think we're gonna impact, the industrial park is gonna impact the flows, the fluid. And based upon all the lead data that we have, was showing that 700,000 was going to never be a rate limiting step for us. And so we had asked for that in kind of, when we were evaluating, well before engineering, what that would look like on a total capacity use.
Because right now it's an undefined number, but it's pretty low on what is available for Carroll County on the south end, right? That capacity is,
You can't handle another heavy water.
you can't, 100,000 or 150,000 gallons, like, is that gonna go to the city, is that gonna go to Carroll County? That's where we're at in those decisions.
And agribusiness is gonna far exceed 150,000 gallons a day. So we're not even capable of engaging those prospects, because unless their build out timeline was sufficient. So 3 to 5 years, and they don't really like that answer, so, that's why we injected kind of what we thought the south capacity would be for the industrial park, to kind of open the funnel up a little bit wider for us as we sit now.
At some point, there's a benefit to that increment that will come in, whether that's existing allocation or future, something will be filled, and the capacity is currently not there for it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Of course, happy to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
I do not have any kind of agenda because I did not know that Josh was not going to be here prior to. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to the top. We probably need to approve the minutes, don't we, from the last meeting?
That is correct.
So moved. Second.
And Beth stepped out. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. We'll come back to that. Let's do the claims next. We've got, 352, which is for the, Delphi schools, it looks like. Robotics stuff that we had looked at. We've got HWC for $30,378.69. As 353, 354 milestone for 106, 006, 08 on the 421. And then we've got RV number 355 for 375 for the bond renewal.
Move to approve all.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. And let's see, then we have, are we looking at the jail water today?
Nobody's here.
Yeah.
Well, Brian knows everything. Oh, guess not.
What do you need in that? What do you need? Jail.
Water, This sewer line?
Yeah, it just says, Board of Commissioners request for assistance with jail water and sewer connections and easements, yeah, and that nobody has an update for them.
As far as I know, it's still having a bid, I haven't seen any actual numbers on it, we did an estimate based on what BFNS designed, but
Okay,
I don't know if it's bid or if there was a specific request.
I don't think it's good.
And I don't think they still have easements.
No, I don't know if they have any numbers that one.
Harry may know from the opposite side of the thing on that.
I don't know.
I'd say they don't have it.
okay. Then, do we want to move on to the building project at the Hoosier Heartland Industrial Park? Do we need to make a motion for the $50,000, or did we do that last time? I apologize, I don't recall.
I think we held on that, but I think that would be the appropriate next steps is to look at engaging design
For
and
engineering.
concept. And
Yeah. So, does anybody have any thoughts on that, or you?
I mean, Jake, you know, we're having this big, $13-14 million situation here for the wastewater treatment.
How are we gonna do them all?
How are we gonna do them all? Thank you.
What's gotta
Thank
go?
you. Huh?
And what's gotta go?
What's gotta go to?
Pragmatically, I think, just from all I've heard, I think that any excess outside of what the commission currently collects in TIF, anything that's gonna get paid for, a large portion of what's gonna get paid for is gonna have to come from the new allocation area. I don't know that for fact, but, and so, doing the shell building certainly enables us to contribute to that new allocation area if we get a prospect to make an investment in the park, and we kind of reload the ability to bond, depending on if they want to tip. So, yeah, I think we've got a bunch of priorities to go through. The shell building one, the wastewater.
That's a
expansion.
priority right now.
They're extremely competing priorities. I think on behalf of the city of Delphi, wastewater capacity and getting Packers, the ability to function fully is probably our number one priority. The last thing I wanna do is wake up and get a call that Indiana Packers has expanded in Frankfurt because we couldn't get them the capacity they needed, or they went to Lafayette, or they went somewhere else. I don't know that to be, it's never been talked about, but that would be my fear. They do have to shut down on days, they have, because of what they currently have, so, I would, as much as I want, we need new prospects, and I think that should still be the mainstay of what we're doing here as a redevelopment commission, and the EDC's point of view, that expansion is also a high key priority there, so. But I don't think you have to have that, this or that. I think there's a way to balance investment into new attracting new business to the industrial park, and then also committing to Indiana Packers' expansion to some degree, so.
So if we concur that that's, maybe priority one, then the other two competing are, increase, the capacity, for, what's going in out there toward the jail, so that you have the ability in the future to do additional development on that side of the highway. And if that's, the jail project's gonna go out there, and that's gonna get torn up, you've gotta fund that upsize at the time that happens. You can't come back in later, and do that, and the county's not gonna, fund excess capacity from what the jail needs. Somebody else has gotta do that. So that's kinda, you gotta do it now, or you're not gonna do it. So has that then become a second priority, above a spec building? We were making hard decisions here.
No, if I understand it here now. I think that is I think that's a lower priority.
But it's got a definite, well, assuming moves forward, we don't know the timetable of that forward. I mean, once they dig a trench, start putting in manholes out there, I mean, you've gotta decide we're gonna upsize that capacity at that time or not.
I think that our recent momentum on the 218 industrial park on the northeast side of town has shown that it has expansion are greater than any second phase of the industrial park. So generationally, if I'm alive, I see the viability of the 218 industrial park, which is directly connected to the city's capacity as well, being a viable candidate before a second phase of the industrial park. So, and I'm just basing that on, we're now 8 years into the industrial park and where we're at. So, I guess that would be where I think the expansion along with the jail becomes a lower priority, compared to the other two options I guess we're discussing.
I mean, it seems to me like I would agree in terms of a lower priority of getting any results from that, but possibly a greater priority in terms of, I mean, we're gonna build a jail and we're gonna put in lines, and you gotta fund your portion now, or it's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
The payback on that seems long-term, but the funding need seems shorter term.
and I think the sunset of the TIF definitely complicates, that investment. Just
Sunset of the TIF, we got 11 years left.
So the short-term funding with a long-term plan, so that's a 35-year play with 9 years of funding or whatever. So, yeah, I think that the Indiana Packers expansion is 1A and the shell building is 1B, because I do think that the shell building is something that could lead to our ability to provide the redevelopment commission with more funding to work on the sewer project. So even if it doesn't exist, even if the sewer project doesn't expand in its current, I guess, pathway, or as we're looking at now. So, I mean, the calls that I were on with Baker Tilly, Baird Financial, I mean, all the folks about funding this expansion through the current existing formula is just not possible. So I would hate to pass up an opportunity to get the industrial park leveraged further, but and still maybe able to provide some capital for the expansion project to some degree. And I think we leave the financial experts to be able to dictate what that is. It won't be a 30-year bond, but it could be some kind of short-term infusion for the project. So that would be my thoughts. Is that I think both are practical, and one complements the other.
I would like to see us.
You guys got a ton of
Table
paperwork.
for this. It's not, you know,
We don't have enough information.
motion to do.
Okay. Second.
I'll second.
All in
Shell
favor?
building? Yeah. Okay. What information do you need? Or you think that the expansion project is gonna help bring clarity to, just so I can help align?
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh ought to be here too, and I think we ought to have,
Are you saying just a general ability for this commission to sort out its problem? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, that's.
I mean, and the need for additional funding information, allocation information, analysis, in that. So not anything specific to what Jake can do to
Right.
further that project?
It's more about the sewer treatment plant and that $50 million extension. I think we need to know more about that.
I would suggest, I know that's a motion, I know we'll interrupt the proceedings, but, I think that for us as the EDC, that $50,000 investment, it does speed a project up, and I think that we have enough, I mean, even with Dan in the room, like having designed, engineered, spec building, it increases our ability to market the park. So it's not just a loss leader, we're gonna use it and work with Dan on that design and have that ready for a potential client, and if the decision is made to not go forward with the shell building, we would have we'd still have a fair investment into getting the park. Cause all I'm trying to do is increase the probability, that's all, I mean, there's no 100%, but I think a design shell building, it does increase our ability to work with potential, customers in the park.
So it seems like to get the shell building built would really increase probability, but you're saying just the design alone would increase the probability some?
Dan?
Speak to this?
Yep, yes, sir.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hard to see, but that's okay.
Redevelopment Commissioner,
That's true.
in another role.
Not to be confused
So,
with the
so
Carroll
that you
County.
understand, so you understand that I understand you, I'm responsible for the redevelopment commission in the city of Lawrence,
Yes, I recall that.
so I'm on both sides of the street.
Excellent.
But, anyway, I wanna provide a little bit of clarity that what we're asking for the $50,000 is for actually the entire schematic phase of the shell building development. So what that does is, gets preliminary design, not complete construction design, preliminary design that puts it on the site, shows what it's gonna look like, we have a rendering of the building. And we determine what the guaranteed maximum price would be as part of that whole deliverable package. So, yes, it is the first phase towards building a shell building. At the end of that phase, it'll be up to you and the EDC to decide how that gets funded from there on, or even if you decide to go further or not at that point. But at least Josh at that point would have a total layout to show a prospect, which could show what the building would look like, show how long it's gonna take to build it. And so it is a product in itself that would give him the opportunity to at least market the product better than he can today. And it would give somebody a vision of how to use the part. So I think it has a lot more merit than just whether or not you're gonna go forward with the shell building project at that time. The, other thing I will share with you is that it's going to cost us far more than $50,000 to produce that thing. Carroll probably have $125,000, $30,000 in that. The reason we do that is we feel like we have to earn your respect and your trust to be sure that it is something you want to do. We're willing to make that risk, if you will, that once we get that done, you'll decide to go forward. If you don't, you're under no obligation. But I'm not just saying this because I'm a Carroll. I do think it gives the county that park site empty now for all these years. And it's largely because there's no vision. There's nothing on there that anybody can put, see, feel, or touch what it's gonna look like. The HWC's help that will be on our team, the architects' help, and the Carroll professionals, you're gonna have a roadmap to decide whether or not you wanna move forward with that building at that time, which is probably March. If you turn this loose today, we're probably March, and we'll bring that information back to you. But that's what we're really talking about today. It's not just design, it's a total vision, layout, utility, budget, and everything relative to schedule of what it's gonna take to make that happen. So if somebody comes to you in that time frame and says, we'd like to be in a building here, how long is it gonna take? Gosh, you just pull that right off the shelf and say, here it is. That's what we're really talking about. Does that help? We're not really asking for a commitment today to, that's one to say you're gonna go ahead and fund that $5 million shell building project. We're asking for a commitment to put all the package together so you know really what you're talking about.
One of my constituents said to me, why is the RDC in the real estate business, you know, why are we developing real estate to do this? I mean, go ahead and give me your answer, Jake, your answer, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, is that the
Sure.
county government's job?
Absolutely,
The
absolutely.
short answer is it wouldn't happen on its own if we did.
Okay.
Redevelopment commissions are in place to leverage and take county assets to make something happen that wouldn't otherwise happen. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The private sector alone isn't gonna step up because nothing's happening out there and take that risk totally on its own. It needs a partner to make this happen, and you would be the partner.
So basically, if we don't do a shell building, the way it looks, we're never gonna sell another lot, basically.
Well, we're never,
No,
never,
say
I don't wanna go that far,
We do have it on the market, so that was
Right.
something we
But
did internally.
what a shell building is, I need everybody to think in terms of a shell building is a building. Alright, so, let me give you a good example of White County. In White County, I did their project. White County had never really had an Indiana Economic Development Corporation site visit. And part of the reason for that is in Indiana, there's something like 500,000 acres of industrial real estate available. What differentiates your cornfield from somebody else's, right? But if you put 50,000 square feet of shell building out there, I will tell you right now in this market, there's not 2 left in the state of Indiana. I don't want them. Would you rather be one of 2 or one of 300 communities that have greenfield? What happens is when you have that shell building sit there, Indiana had from Mount Delco, will physically take that deed and bring it to Carroll County. In the case of White County, we had 3 people looking at their building at one time. One of them was Rose Acres, that ended up buying it. One of them was Mitsubishi, and then COVID hit. And the other one was Sweetener Supply out of Berlin, Illinois, who came to look at it and decided it wasn't what they wanted. Oh, but we like White County, we've never seen this before, we like this before. And they went right next to it and built 110,000 square feet. So it brings people to your community ready and looking for a place to build that would not otherwise come. And that's what we have to keep in mind, that it's really a building that advertises and promotes the community.
Do I have a motion?
You already have a motion and a second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Alright,
So your table,
I vote table right now.
okay.
Thank you.
Jack, move the motion.
I'll make a motion, I seconded it, before we got into that last bit of discussion.
But thank you, valuable discussion.
And Beth, we still have the treasurer's report, somebody wanna check her, you know?
You know, she
Can we
she
just
said,
go
she
with the-
handed this to me and said, I'm gonna
Okay.
be leaving, so I know that she
Perfect.
wasn't coming back.
I think so then.
She wants that?
This is what Barry